millionaire paralyzed by intern's discovery of old family photo in company archives. The harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the dusty shelves of Anderson Corp's cavernous archives. Sarah Johnson, a bright-eyed intern with ambitions as towering as the skyscrapers outside, methodically made her way through the rows of ancient ledgers and faded documents. A task seemed simple enough: digitize the company's vast history. But as her fingers brushed against a weathered album, fate had something far more extraordinary in store. A loose photograph fluttered to the floor, landing face down at Sarah's feet. She bent to retrieve it, her brow furrowing as she turned it over. The sepia-toned image hit her like a bolt of lightning. There, smiling back at her from decades past, stood a younger version of Jack Anderson, the current CEO of the company. His arm was draped casually over the shoulders of a couple that made Sarah's heart skip a beat: her parents. Time seemed to stand still as Sarah stared at the impossible image. How could this be? So her parents had never once mentioned knowing the Andersons, let alone being close enough for such an intimate photograph. The date scrawled on the back placed this moment long before Sarah was even born. As she scrutinized the photo, her eyes locked onto a detail that sent a chill down her spine. The woman, her mother, was wearing a locket that Sarah now possessed, a cherished family heirloom passed down through generations. But in the photograph, the locket was open, revealing a tiny image inside that Sarah couldn't quite make out. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, jolting Sarah back to reality. With trembling hands, she quickly slipped the photo into her pocket, her mind reeling with questions. Who were these young, carefree versions of her parents? What was their connection to Jack Anderson? And what secrets lay hidden within that locket? As Sarah tried to steady her breathing, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had stumbled upon something monumental. This single photograph had the power to unravel everything she thought she knew about her family, her past, and the very company she was working for. Little did Sarah know, this moment would set in motion a chain of events that would shake the foundations of her world and the empire she had fought so hard to be a part of. Sarah Johnson had always been a force of nature. At 25, she was the youngest intern Anderson Corp had ever accepted into its prestigious program. With her quick wit, analytical mind, and unwavering determination, she had quickly become a rising star within the company. Her piercing green eyes and unruly auburn hair matched her fiery personality, a trait that had both opened doors and caused friction in equal measure. Raised in a modest home in the suburbs of Chicago, Sarah had grown up hearing stories of her parents' struggles and triumphs. Her father, David Johnson, was a high school history teacher, his passion for the past evident in the way his eyes lit up when he spoke of long-gone civilizations. Her mother, Elizabeth, worked as a nurse at the local hospital, her gentle hands and kind smile bringing comfort to countless patients over the years. They were loving, supportive, and had always encouraged Sarah to reach for the stars. Yet there was always a sadness in their eyes that Sarah could never quite understand, a weight they seemed to carry that went unspoken. The Johnsons weren't wealthy, but they had provided Sarah with a childhood rich in love and experiences. Family dinners were a nightly ritual, filled with laughter and animated discussions about everything from current events to Sarah's latest science fair project. Weekends were often spent on impromptu road trips, exploring small towns and hidden corners of nature. It was during these trips that Sarah first discovered her love for solving puzzles and unraveling mysteries, traits that would serve her well in her future career. Sarah had fought tooth and nail to earn her place at Anderson Corp. The company was a behemoth in the tech industry, known for its cutting-edge innovations and ruthless business practices. Landing an internship that was akin to winning the lottery in the corporate world. Sarah saw it as her ticket to a better life, a chance to make her parents proud and secure a future filled with possibilities. At the helm of Anderson Corp stood Jack Anderson, a titan of industry whose name was spoken in hushed, reverent tones in boardrooms across the globe. At 55, Jack was the picture of corporate success, impeccably dressed, silver-haired, with a commanding presence that could fill a room without him uttering a single word. He had taken over the company from his father 20 years ago and had since transformed it from a respectable tech firm into a global powerhouse. Jack's rise to power was the stuff of legend in the business world. He had started in the mailroom of his father's company, working his way up through sheer grit and determination. His innovative ideas and cutthroat business acumen had propelled Anderson Corp to new heights, but rumors persisted about the ethical corners cut along the way. To the public, Jack was a philanthropist and visionary. Within the company, he was known as a demanding taskmaster who accepted nothing short of excellence. Despite his lofty position, Jack was a man haunted by his past. His office on the top floor of Anderson Tower was a testament to his success, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city he essentially owned. Yet, in quiet moments, when the weight of his empire pressed down upon him, Jack would often find himself staring at a small, framed photograph hidden in his desk drawer, a reminder of a life long lost and choices that could never be undone. As Sarah delved deeper into her internship, she found herself crossing paths with Jack more frequently. Each encounter left her both inspired and unsettled. There was something in the way he looked at her, a flicker of recognition quickly masked by his usual stern demeanor. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Jack Anderson than met the eye, a suspicion that would soon be confirmed in ways she could never have imagined. The corporate landscape of Anderson Corp was populated by a cast of characters, each playing their part in the daily drama of big business. There was Marcus Blackwood, the sharp-tongued CFO, whose loyalty to Jack was unwavering, even as he harbored his own ambitions for power. Emily Chen, the brilliant head of RD, whose innovative designs were the lifeblood of the company, yet who struggled with the ethical implications of their military contract. And then there was Robert Hawkins, Jack's personal assistant, a quiet man whose unassuming demeanor belied a sharp mind and a knack for knowing all the company's secrets. As Sarah navigated this complex world of corporate politics and cutting-edge technology, she found an unlikely ally in Lisa Navarro, a fellow intern with a background in computer science. Lisa's easygoing nature and quick humor provided a welcome contrast to the often stressful environment of Anderson Corp. The two young women formed a fast friendship, bonding over late-night coding sessions and shared dreams of making their mark on the world. Little did Sarah know that her discovery in the archives would soon set in motion a chain of events that would not only challenge everything she thought she knew about herself and her family, but would also threaten to topple the very empire she was working so hard to be a part of. The photograph burning a hole in her pocket was just the first piece of a puzzle that stretched back decades, intertwining the fates of the Johnsons and the Andersons in ways that would shock them all. As Sarah left the archives that fateful day, her mind racing with questions, she couldn't have known that high above her, in his plush corner office, Jack Anderson was staring out at the city skyline, lost in thoughts of the past. In his hand he clutched a small, worn photograph, a mirror image of the one Sarah had found. The wheels of fate had begun to turn, bringing long-buried secrets to light and setting the stage for a confrontation that would change everything. Sarah Johnson had always been a force of nature. At 25, she was the youngest intern Anderson Corp had ever accepted into its prestigious program. With her quick wit, analytical mind, and unwavering determination, she had quickly become a rising star within the company. Her piercing green eyes and unruly auburn hair matched her fiery personality, a trait that had both opened doors and caused friction in equal measure. Raised in a modest home in the suburbs of Chicago, Sarah had grown up hearing stories of her parents' struggles and triumphs. Her father, David Johnson, was a high school history teacher, his passion for the past evident in the way his eyes lit up when he spoke of long-gone civilizations. History is like a captivating channel, he'd often say, And once you tune in, you'll want to hit that subscribe button to never miss an episode. The mother, Elizabeth, worked as a nurse at the local hospital, her gentle hands and kind smile bringing comfort to countless patients over the years. They were loving, supportive, and had always encouraged Sarah to reach for the stars. Yet there was always a sadness in their eyes that Sarah could never quite understand, or weight they seemed to carry that went unspoken. The Johnsons weren't wealthy, but they had provided Sarah with a childhood rich in love and experiences. Family dinners were a nightly ritual, filled with laughter and animated discussions about everything from current events to Sarah's latest science fair project. Weekends were often spent on impromptu road trips, exploring small towns and hidden corners of nature. It was during these trips that Sarah first discovered her love for solving puzzles and unraveling mysteries, traits that would serve her well in her future career. Sarah had fought tooth and nail to earn her place at Anderson Corp. The company was a behemoth in the tech industry, known for its cutting-edge innovations and ruthless business practices. Landing an internship that was akin to winning the lottery in the corporate world, Sarah saw it as her ticket to a better life, a chance to make her parents proud and secure a future filled with possibilities. At the helm of Anderson Corp stood Jack Anderson, a titan of industry whose name was spoken in hushed, reverent tones in boardrooms across the globe. At 55, Jack was the picture of corporate success, impeccably dressed, silver-haired, with a commanding presence that could fill a room without him uttering a single word. He had taken over the company from his father 20 years ago and had since transformed it from a respectable tech firm into a global powerhouse. Jack's rise to power was the stuff of legend in the business world. He had started in the mailroom of his father's company, working his way up through sheer grit and determination. His innovative ideas and cutthroat business acumen had propelled Anderson Corp to new heights, but rumors persisted about the ethical corners cut along the way. To the public, Jack was a philanthropist and visionary. Within the company, he was known as a demanding taskmaster who accepted nothing short of excellence. During one of his rare public speeches, Jack had famously said, "Success in business is like building a loyal audience. You need to provide value, consistently deliver, and always encourage people to stay tuned, or in modern terms, click that subscribe button." Despite his lofty position, Jack was a man haunted by his past. His office on the top floor of Anderson Tower was a testament to his success, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city he essentially owned. Yet in quiet moments, when the weight of his empire pressed down upon him, Jack would often find himself staring at a small, framed photograph hidden in his desk drawer, a reminder of a life long lost and choices that could never be undone. As Sarah delved deeper into her internship, she found herself crossing paths with Jack more frequently. Each encounter left her both inspired and unsettled. There was something in the way he looked at her, a flicker of recognition quickly masked by his usual stern demeanor. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Jack Anderson than met the eye, a suspicion that would soon be confirmed in ways she could never have imagined. The corporate landscape of Anderson Corp was populated by a cast of characters, each playing their part in the daily drama of big business. There was Marcus Blackwood, the sharp-tongued CFO, whose loyalty to Jack was unwavering, even as he harbored his own ambitions for power. Emily Chen, the brilliant head of RD, whose innovative designs were the lifeblood of the company, yet who struggled with the ethical implications of their military contracts. And then there was Robert Hawkins, Jack's personal assistant, a quiet man whose unassuming demeanor belied a sharp mind and a knack for knowing all the company's secrets. During a company-wide presentation, Emily had once quipped, "Our RD process is like a thrilling series. You'll want to subscribe to see what groundbreaking innovation comes next." As Sarah navigated this complex world of corporate politics and cutting-edge technology, she found an unlikely ally in Lisa Navarro, a fellow intern with a background in computer science. Lisa's easygoing nature and quick humor provided a welcome contrast to the often stressful environment of Anderson Corp. The two young women formed a fast friendship, bonding over late-night coding sessions and shared dreams of making their mark on the world. "You know, Sarah," Lisa had said one night as they pored over lines of code, "cracking these algorithms is like trying to boost our view account. We need to keep people engaged and always leave them wanting to hit that subscribe button for more." Little did Sarah know that her discovery in the archives would soon set in motion a chain of events that would not only challenge everything she thought she knew about herself and her family, but would also threaten to topple the very empire she was working so hard to be a part of. The photograph burning a hole in her pocket was just the first piece of a puzzle that stretched back decades, intertwining the fates of the Johnsons and the Andersons in ways that would shock them all. As Sarah left the archives that fateful day, her mind racing with questions, she couldn't have known that high above her, in his plush corner office, Jack Anderson was staring out at the city skyline, lost in thoughts of the past. In his hand, he clutched a small, worn photograph, a mirror image of the one Sarah had found. The wheels of fate had begun to turn, bringing long-buried secrets to light and setting the stage for a confrontation that would change everything. Sarah's journey at Anderson Corp was about to take a dramatic turn, much like a plot twist in a riveting series. As she stepped into the elevator, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, she couldn't help but think, if my life were a show, this would be the moment where the narrator says, "Don't forget to subscribe to see what happens next." Sarah's world came crashing down around her as she stared at the documents spread across a tiny apartment's kitchen table. The adoption papers, yellowed with age but unmistakably authentic, told a story she never could have imagined. Her hands trembled as she read the names again: birth mother Catherine Anderson, birth father Jack Anderson. The very man she had been working for, the titan of industry she had admired from afar, was her biological father. The revelation hit her like a tidal wave, washing away everything she thought she knew about herself. Memories of her childhood, once warm and comforting, now felt tainted with deception. How could her parents, the people who had raised her, loved her, shaped her into the person she was, have kept this from her for so long? As the initial shock began to subside, anger bubbled up inside her. Sarah paced her small living room, mind racing with questions. Why had Jack given her up? Did he even know she existed? And if he did, how could he have let her work at his company without saying a word? Across town, in the opulent penthouse suite of Anderson Tower, Jack Anderson sat in his leather armchair, a glass of scotch untouched on the side table. The phone call he had just received from his private investigator had confirmed his worst fears and ignited a spark of hope he had long thought extinguished. Sarah Johnson, the bright young intern who had caught his eye, was indeed his daughter, the child he thought he had lost forever. Jack's mind wandered back to that fateful night 25 years ago. He had been young, ambitious and reckless. Catherine, his college sweetheart, had told him she was pregnant, and in a moment of panic he had pushed her away. By the time he realized his mistake, it was too late. Catherine had disappeared, and with her, his unborn child. For years he had searched, but every lead had gone cold. Eventually he had buried his grief in his work, building Anderson Corp into the empire it was today. Now faced with the knowledge that his daughter had been right under his nose all this time, Jack was overwhelmed with a mixture of joy, regret and fear. How could he approach her? What could he possibly say to make up for a lifetime of absence? As dawn broke over the city, Sarah made her decision. She would confront Jack directly. She deserved answers, and she would get them, no matter the cost to her career or her heart. With determination in her steps, she marched into Anderson Corp, bypassing security with her intern badge and heading straight for the executive floor. Jack was in the middle of a meeting when Sarah burst into his office, her green eyes flashing with a fire he recognized all too well. The room fell silent as father and daughter faced each other, the weight of unspoken truths hanging heavy between them. "Is it true?" Sarah demanded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you my father?" A simple question shattered the carefully constructed facade Jack had maintained for decades. In that moment he wasn't a powerful CEO, but a man facing the consequences of his past actions. "Yes," he replied, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Sarah, I..." But Sarah wasn't ready to hear explanations or apologies. The confirmation of her suspicions unleashed a torrent of emotions she could no longer contain. "How could you?" she cried, tears streaming down her face. "How could you let me work here, see me every day, and never say a word?" Jack dismissed the stunned executives from the room, never taking his eyes off Sarah. As the door closed behind them, he took a step towards her, his hand outstretched. "I didn't know," he said softly. "I've been searching for you for years, but I had no idea you were so close. And when I saw you, I thought, but I couldn't be sure. I hired a private investigator to confirm my suspicions." Sarah recoiled from his touch, her mind reeling. "And my mother? Catherine? What happened to her?" Pain flashed across Jack's face. "I don't know," he admitted. "She disappeared before you were born. I've been trying to find her too all these years." The revelation of her birth mother's identity and disappearance added another layer of complexity to Sarah's already tumultuous emotions. She sank into a chair, suddenly feeling drained. "Why did you give me up?" she asked, her voice small and vulnerable. Jack's shoulders sagged as he leaned against his desk. "I didn't," he said. "When Catherine told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I said things I've regretted every day since. By the time I came to my senses, she was gone. I've spent the last 25 years trying to make up for that mistake, hoping that someday I'd find you both and make things right." As Jack spoke, Sarah's investigative instincts began to kick in, pushing through the emotional turmoil. Something didn't add up. If Jack had been searching for her all this time, how had she ended up with the Johnsons? And why had they never told her she was adopted? "My parents," Sarah began, then corrected herself. "The Johnsons. Did they know? Were they part of this?" Jack shook his head. "I don't know. The investigator is still looking into how you came to be with them. But Sarah, I want you to know that I never stopped looking for you. Every year on your birthday I would." His voice trailed off as he walked to a hidden safe behind a painting. Opening it, he pulled out a small box. Inside were 25 envelopes, each addressed simply to "my daughter" and dated on Sarah's birthday. Sarah's hand shook as she opened the first envelope. Inside was a heartfelt letter from Jack, expressing his love for his unknown child and his hopes for their future. Each subsequent letter chronicled his search, his regrets, and his unwavering desire to one day be a part of his child's life. As she read, Sarah's anger began to give way to confusion and a tentative understanding. The man described in these letters was a far cry from the ruthless businessman she had come to know. He was vulnerable, filled with regret, and desperately longing for a connection he thought he had lost forever. And looking up from the letters, Sarah met Jack's gaze. The pain and hope she saw there mirrored her own conflicted emotions. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said slowly, "but I think I want to try to understand." Jack nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "That's all I can ask for," he said softly. "We have a lot to talk about, and I promise to answer any questions you have, no matter how difficult." As they settled in for a long conversation, neither Sarah nor Jack realized that their reunion was about to set off a chain of events that would shake Anderson Corp to its very foundations. The truth of Sarah's parentage was just the tip of the iceberg, and the secrets that lay beneath had the power to destroy everything they both held dear. The days following Sarah's confrontation with Jack were a whirlwind of emotions and revelations. As she struggled to come to terms with her newfound identity, Sarah found herself caught between two worlds, the familiar comfort of her life with the Johnsons and the allure of her biological father's wealth and power. Sarah's first call after leaving Jack's office had been to her parents, or rather, the people she had always known as her parents. The conversation was tearful and fraught with tension. David and Elizabeth Johnson were devastated that their secret had been discovered, but more than that, they were terrified of losing the daughter they had raised and loved as their own. "We never meant to hurt you, sweetheart," Elizabeth had sobbed over the phone. "We loved you from the moment we saw you. You were our miracle." David, his voice thick with emotion, added, "We always planned to tell you, Sarah. We could never find the right time. And as the years went by, it became harder and harder." Sarah listened to their explanations and apologies with a heavy heart. She understood their love for her was real, but the betrayal still stung deeply. "Oh, I need some time," she had told them. "I love you both, but I need to figure out who I am now." As she hung up the phone, Sarah felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. Her entire world had been turned upside down in the span of a few days. She was no longer just Sarah Johnson, ambitious intern. She was Sarah Anderson, heir to one of the largest tech empires in the world. The weight of this new identity pressed down on her, suffocating in its intensity. Meanwhile, Jack Anderson was facing his own internal struggle. The joy of finding his long-lost daughter was tempered by the fear of losing her again. He knew he had a lifetime of absence to make up for, and he was determined to do whatever it took to build a relationship with Sarah. In the days that followed, Jack cleared his schedule, cancelling meetings and delegating tasks to his executives. His sole focus became getting to know Sarah. He invited her to dinners, showed her family albums, and shared stories of her birth mother, Catherine. "She was brilliant," Jack said one evening as they sat in his penthouse, looking out over the city lights. "Catherine had a mind like no one I've ever known. She could see patterns where others saw chaos, solutions where others saw only problems." Sarah listened intently, trying to piece together the image of the woman who had given her life. "What happened between you two?" she asked softly. Jack's face clouded with regret. "I was young and stupid," he admitted. "When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I had big dreams for the company, for my future. I thought a child would hold me back." He shook his head, self-loathing evident in his voice. "I told her to get rid of it, to get rid of you. It was the biggest mistake of my life." Sarah felt a pang in her chest at his words. The pain of rejection, even from so long ago, cut deep. "So she left?" Jack nodded. "By the time I came to my senses, she was gone. I searched for years, but it was like she had vanished into thin air. I hired private investigators, used every resource at my disposal, but there was never a trace." As Sarah absorbed this information, she couldn't help but wonder about the circumstances that had led to her adoption by the Johnsons. There were still so many unanswered questions, so many pieces of the puzzle missing. While Sarah grappled with her new reality, life at Anderson Corp continued to move forward. Her fellow intern and friend, Lisa Navarro, had noticed the change in Sarah's demeanor and the sudden, inexplicable access she seemed to have to the upper echelons of the company. "Okay, spill," Lisa demanded one day as they worked late in the office. "What's going on with you? You've been acting weird for weeks, and don't think I haven't noticed you coming and going from Jack Anderson's office like you own the place." Sarah hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. She trusted Lisa, but the truth seemed too fantastical to be believed. Finally, she decided on a partial truth. "I found out some information about my birth parents," she said carefully. "It turns out I have connections to the company I didn't know about." Lisa's eyes widened. "No way. Are you secretly some long-lost Anderson or something?" The accuracy of Lisa's guess caught Sarah off guard, and her momentary hesitation was all the confirmation Lisa needed. Her friend's jaw dropped. "Oh my God, you are! You're Jack Anderson's daughter, aren't you?" Sarah quickly shushed her, looking around to make sure no one had overheard. "It's complicated," she whispered, "and I'm still trying to figure everything out. You can't tell anyone, Lisa. Please." Lisa mimed, zipping her lips. "Your secret's safe with me," she promised. "But wow, Sarah. That's huge. How are you dealing with all this? Sarah sighed, feeling the weight of her secret lift slightly now that she had someone to confide in. Honestly, I don't know. It's like I'm living someone else's life. Everything I thought I knew about myself, about my family, it's all changed. As Sarah opened up to Lisa about her conflicted feelings, she found herself growing more comfortable with her new reality. Lisa's unwavering support and practical advice helped ground Sarah, reminding her that regardless of her biological parentage, she was still the same person she had always been. While Sarah was navigating her personal turmoil, a storm was brewing within the walls of Anderson Corp. Marcus Blackwood, the sharp-tongued CFO, had caught wind of the unusual amount of time Jack was spending with the lowly intern. His suspicions aroused, Marcus began to dig deeper, determined to uncover whatever secret Jack was hiding. Marcus had always been ambitious, biding his time and accumulating power within the company. He saw Jack's distraction as an opportunity to make his move. Under the guise of routine audits, Marcus began to scrutinize every decision Jack had made over the past few months, looking for any sign of impropriety or weakness. As Marcus dug deeper, he uncovered a trail of unusual financial transactions dating back years. Large sums of money had been funneled into private investigations and search operations, all authorized directly by Jack. The pattern was clear. Jack had been searching for someone, spending millions of company dollars in the process. Armed with this information, Marcus confronted Jack in his office late one evening. Care to explain why you've been embezzling company funds for your personal wild goose chase, Jack? Marcus demanded, tossing a file of financial records onto the desk. Jack's face paled as he realized the extent of Marcus's discovery. It's not what you think, Marcus, he began, but Marcus cut him off. Save it, the CFO snapped. I don't care about your personal problems. What I care about is the future of this company. And right now, you're a liability. As Jack and Marcus faced off, neither man noticed Sarah standing frozen in the doorway, having arrived for a scheduled dinner with her father. The raised voices had drawn her attention, and now she found herself privy to a conversation that threatened to unravel everything. You have two choices, Jack, Marcus continued, oblivious to their audience. Either you step down voluntarily, citing health reasons or whatever excuse you want to cook up, or I take this to the board. I'm sure they'll be very interested to know how you've been misusing company resources. Jack's mind raced, trying to find a way out of the corner he'd been backed into. He couldn't step down, not now, not when he'd finally found Sarah and had a chance to build a relationship with her. But if Marcus went to the board, the resulting scandal could destroy not only his career, but also any chance he had of connecting with his daughter. It was at this moment that Sarah decided to make her presence known. Stepping into the office, she cleared her throat, causing both men to whirl around in surprise. I think, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, that you gentlemen need to hear the full story before any decisions are made. Over the next hour, Sarah and Jack explained the truth of their relationship and the circumstances that had led to Jack's years-long search. Marcus listened with growing amazement, his plans for a hostile takeover crumbling in the face of this unexpected revelation. You see, Marcus, Jack concluded, those funds weren't embezzled. They were invested in finding my daughter, a daughter who, as it turns out, has the potential to be a tremendous asset to this company. Marcus sat back, his mind whirling with the implications of what he'd just learned. The scandal he'd hoped to use as leverage had transformed into a potential PR goldmine. The lost heir of the Anderson Empire returned to take her rightful place. It was the kind of story that could captivate the public and send stock prices soaring. All right, Marcus said finally, a calculating gleam in his eye. I'm willing to keep this quiet for now, but we need to approach this carefully. If we're going to reveal Sarah's identity to the world, it needs to be on our terms. As the three of them began to discuss strategies for managing this revelation, Sarah felt a growing unease. She had only just begun to come to terms with her new identity, and now it was being treated as a corporate asset to be leveraged for maximum gain. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of secret meetings and careful planning. A team of PR specialists was brought in, sworn to secrecy as they crafted the perfect narrative to introduce Sarah to the world. Every detail was meticulously managed, from the timing of the announcement to the carefully staged photos of Sarah and Jack together. Throughout this process, Sarah found herself increasingly uncomfortable with the commodification of her personal story. She had entered the corporate world hoping to make a name for herself based on her own merits, not to ride the coattails of a sensational family revelation. Her discomfort was compounded by the strain this secret was putting on her relationships. She hadn't spoken to David and Elizabeth Johnson since their initial phone call, and the weight of their unresolved issues hung heavy on her heart. Lisa, bound by her promise of secrecy, was her only confidante, a lifeline of normalcy in the midst of the chaos. As the date of the public announcement drew near, Sarah's anxiety reached a fever pitch. The night before the press conference, she found herself standing on the balcony of Jack's penthouse, looking out over the city she had once dreamed of conquering on her own terms. Jack joined her, sensing her unease. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" he asked gently. Sarah turned to him, her eyes filled with conflicting emotions. "I don't know," she admitted. "All of this, it feels wrong somehow, like we're turning my life, our relationship, into some kind of corporate spectacle." Jack sighed, understanding all too well the pressure she was under. "I know it's not ideal," he said, "but Marcus was right about one thing: we need to control the narrative. Once the truth is out there, we can focus on building our relationship away from the public eye." Sarah nodded, but the knot in her stomach didn't ease. As she went to bed that night, her dreams were haunted by faceless crowds and flashing cameras, all demanding a piece of her newly discovered identity. The morning of the press conference dawned bright and clear. Sarah stood before the mirror in the designer suit that had been chosen for her, barely recognizing the polished young woman who stared back at her. This was it, the moment her life would change irrevocably. As she stepped onto the stage beside Jack, facing a sea of reporters and flashing cameras, Sarah felt a moment of panic. But then she caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd, Lisa, who had snuck into the press conference to support her friend. Drawing strength from Lisa's encouraging smile, Sarah took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "My name is Sarah Johnson Anderson, and I have a story to tell you." The Anderson Corp boardroom was a pressure cooker of tension. Sarah sat at the head of the long mahogany table, flanked by Jack on one side and Marcus on the other. The rest of the board members filled the remaining seats, their faces a mix of shock, curiosity, and barely concealed calculation. "Gentlemen," Jack began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation, "I've called this emergency meeting to address the recent allegations of corporate fraud and to reveal a truth that will change the future of this company." All eyes turned to Sarah, who felt the weight of their scrutiny like a physical force. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "My name is Sarah Johnson Anderson," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I am Jack Anderson's daughter, and I am here to set the record straight." A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. Marcus leaned forward, a predatory gleam in his eye. "And how, Ms. Anderson, do you propose to explain the millions in company funds that have been funneled into private investigations over the years?" Sarah met his gaze unflinchingly. "Those funds were used to search for me," she explained. "I was separated from my father at birth, and he has spent the last 25 years trying to find me. Every dollar spent was in service of reuniting our family and securing the future of this company." The board members exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to process this information. Sarah pressed on, laying out the full story of her adoption, her unknowing internship at Anderson Corp, and the recent discovery of her true identity. As she spoke, Sarah could see the wheels turning in the minds of the board members. Some looked sympathetic, moved by the tale of family separation and reunion. Others, she noted, were already calculating the potential PR benefits and risks of this revelation. Jack took over, outlining their plan to go public with the story. "We believe that by controlling the narrative, we can turn this potential scandal into a positive story of family reunification and corporate legacy," he explained. Marcus, seeing the tide of opinion shifting, quickly changed tack. "While this is certainly a touching story," he said, his tone dripping with false sincerity, "we cannot ignore the fact that company resources were misused. The shareholders will demand accountability." It was at this moment that Sarah made a decision that would alter the course of her life and the future of Anderson Corp. "You're right, Mr. Blackwood," she said, causing all eyes to snap back to her. "Accountability is crucial, which is why I propose a full audit of the company's finances going back to the beginning of my father's tenure as CEO." The room erupted in a cacophony of voices. Jack looked at Sarah in surprise, while Marcus's face paled visibly. Sarah raised her hand, calling for silence. "If we're going to ask the public to trust us with this story, we need to demonstrate complete transparency. No secrets, no hidden agendas." As the implications of her proposal sank in, Sarah could see the balance of power in the room shifting. Those board members who had been skeptical now looked at her with newfound respect, while others, including Marcus, seemed suddenly nervous. Jack, recovering from his initial shock, nodded slowly. "I second the motion," he said, his voice filled with pride. "Let's put it to a vote." The next few hours were a blur of heated debates and tense negotiations. By the time the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the boardroom, a decision had been reached. The board voted in favor of Sarah's proposal, authorizing a comprehensive audit and agreeing to the public revelation of Sarah's identity. As the board members filed out, Jack pulled Sarah aside. "That was a bold move," he said, his eyes searching her face. "Are you sure you're ready for what comes next?" Sarah nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. "I'm sure," she replied. "It's time for the truth to come out, all of it." The next morning, Sarah found herself standing before a sea of reporters, cameras flashing as she and Jack prepared to make their announcement. As Jack began to speak, introducing Sarah to the world as his long-lost daughter, she felt a sudden wave of panic. This was it, the moment her life would change forever. There would be no going back to the anonymity of her old life, no escaping the spotlight that came with being an Anderson. As Jack finished his statement and turned to her, inviting her to speak, Sarah took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "My name is Sarah Johnson Anderson, and I have a story to tell you, a story of loss, of search, and of unexpected reunions." As Sarah recounted her tale, she could see the reporters hanging on her every word. She spoke of her adoption, her loving upbringing by the Johnsons, and her recent discovery of her true parentage. She addressed the allegations of financial impropriety head-on, explaining the years-long search that had led to this moment. In the interest of full transparency, Sarah concluded, Anderson Corp will be undergoing a comprehensive audit. We are committed to accountability and to rebuilding the trust of our shareholders and the public. The press conference erupted into a frenzy of questions. Sarah and Jack fielded them as best they could, presenting a united front in the face of the media onslaught. As they finally stepped away from the podium, Sarah felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The truth was out there now, for better or worse. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself at the center of a media storm. Her face was splashed across newspapers and magazines, her story dissected and analyzed on every news channel. She received countless interview requests, each promising an exclusive insight into her extraordinary journey. At Anderson Corp, the atmosphere was equally chaotic. The announcement of the audit had sent shockwaves through the company. Teams of accountants and lawyers descended on the offices, combing through years of financial records. Sarah threw herself into the audit process, determined to understand every aspect of the company she was now irrevocably tied to. She spent long hours poring over financial statements and corporate documents, her background in business proving invaluable as she navigated the complex world of corporate finance. As the audit progressed, Sarah began to uncover discrepancies that went beyond her father's search for her. There were questionable contracts, suspicious transfers of funds, and a web of shell companies that seemed designed to obscure the true nature of certain transactions. One evening, as Sarah was working late in her newly assigned office, she stumbled upon a series of emails that made her blood run cold. The correspondence between Marcus Blackwood and several board members outlined an arm to oust Jack from his position as CEO, using the scandal of Sarah's discovery as leverage. Sarah's mind raced as she realized the full extent of the conspiracy. Marcus hadn't been acting alone. He had allies on the board, all of them eager to seize control of the company. The revelation of her identity had thrown a wrench in their plans, but it was clear they weren't going to give up easily. Torn between her loyalty to her newfound father and her commitment to uncovering the truth, Sarah found herself facing an impossible decision. Should she take this information to Jack, potentially protecting him but also tipping off the conspirators? Or should she continue her investigation in secret, gathering more evidence before making her move? So Sarah grappled with this dilemma. She received an unexpected visitor. Lisa, her friend and fellow intern, knocked on her office door, her face etched with concern. "Sarah," she said, her voice low and urgent, "I think I've found something you need to see." Lisa produced a USB drive, explaining that she had been helping with the data analysis for the audit. "I noticed some strange patterns in the RD budget allocations," she said. "When I dug deeper, I found references to a project called Lazarus. It's buried under layers of encryption, but from what I can tell, it's big, and it's not on any official books." Sarah's heart raced as she plugged in the drive and began to examine Lisa's findings. The Lazarus project, whatever it was, seemed to be at the heart of the financial irregularities she had been uncovering. But more than that, it represented a secret that could potentially bring down not just Marcus and his co-conspirators, but the entire company. As the full implications of their discovery began to sink in, Sarah and Lisa shared a look of grim determination. They were no longer just interns or even heirs to a corporate empire. They were whistleblowers standing on the precipice of a scandal that could shake the foundations of the business world. "What do we do now?" Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah turned to look out the window at the city skyline, the lights of countless offices twinkling in the darkness. She thought of Jack, of the Johnsons, of the thousands of employees whose livelihoods depended on Anderson Corp. She thought of her own journey, from ambitious intern to reluctant heiress to potential destroyer of her father's legacy. "We follow the truth," Sarah said finally, her voice firm with resolve, "wherever it leads us." As dawn broke over the city, Sarah and Lisa were still hunched over their computers, unraveling the threads of the Lazarus project. They had no way of knowing that their actions in the coming days would not only determine the fate of Anderson Corp, but would also set in motion a chain of events that would forever change the landscape of corporate America. The clock was ticking, the stakes were impossibly high, and Sarah Johnson Anderson was about to face the greatest challenge of her young life. The girl who had once dreamed of making her mark on the business world was now poised to do just that, but in a way she could never have imagined. The fallout from the revelations about the Lazarus project hit Anderson Corp like a tsunami. As Sarah stood before the board, her voice trembling but resolute, she couldn't help but feel like she was narrating her own downfall. If you're watching this unfold, she thought to herself, you might want to buckle up. This corporate roller coaster is about to take a wild turn. Jack Anderson sat at the head of the table, his face ashen as he listened to his daughter lay out the evidence of widespread corruption within his company. The other board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some avoiding eye contact, others glaring daggers at Sarah. "The Lazarus Project," Sarah explained, her voice echoing in the tense silence of the boardroom, was not just a misappropriation of funds. It was a systematic attempt to develop and hide technology that could have far-reaching consequences for personal privacy and national security. As she spoke, Sarah couldn't help but imagine addressing not just the board, but a wider audience. "I know what you're thinking," she mused silently. "How could things have gone so wrong? Well, stick around. This story is far from over." The implications of Sarah's words hung heavy in the air. The technology developed under the Lazarus Project had the potential to revolutionize data mining and surveillance, but its development had been hidden from regulators and shareholders alike. Jack stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Sarah," he said, his voice strained, "can we speak privately for a moment?" As father and daughter stepped out into the hallway, the boardroom erupted into chaos. Sarah could hear raised voices and accusations flying even through the closed door. "What have you done?" Jack hissed, his face a mask of anger and fear. "Do you have any idea of the consequences of what you've just revealed?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I do," she replied, "and I also know that it was the right thing to do. The truth had to come out, Dad, for the sake of the company, for the sake of all the people who could be affected by this technology." Jack ran a hand through his silver hair, suddenly looking every bit his age. "You don't understand," he said, his voice breaking. "The Lazarus Project, it wasn't just about the technology, it was about..." Before he could finish, the door burst open and Marcus Blackwood stormed out, his face red with fury. "You," he snarled, pointing at Sarah, "you've destroyed everything we've worked for." As Marcus advanced towards them, his fists clenched, Sarah couldn't help but think, if you're still with us, viewers, you might want to lean in. Things are about to get interesting. Just as Marcus reached them, security guards appeared, alerted by the commotion. They quickly restrained the enraged CFO, who continued to shout threats and accusations as he was led away. In the midst of the chaos, Sarah felt a hand on her arm. She turned to see Lisa, her face pale but determined. "Sarah," Lisa whispered, "we need to go. Now. There's more you need to see." As they slipped away from the pandemonium in the boardroom, Sarah's mind was reeling. She had known the revelations would cause upheaval, but the level of hostility, particularly from Marcus, was unexpected. What else could there be? What deeper secrets was the Lazarus Project hiding? Alyssa led her to a small, out-of-the-way office where they had set up their makeshift investigation headquarters. As Lisa booted up her laptop, Sarah paced the room, her thoughts in turmoil. "I bet you're wondering what could possibly be worse than what we've already uncovered," Sarah murmured, almost as if addressing an invisible audience. "Trust me, I'm asking myself the same question." Lisa's sharp intake of breath drew Sarah's attention back to the screen. "Sarah," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I think I know why Marcus reacted so strongly. Look at this." As Sarah leaned in to examine the documents Lisa had uncovered, she felt the floor drop out from under her. The Lazarus Project wasn't just about developing invasive technology, it was about using that technology. And the primary target, Sarah herself. "Oh, plot twist," Sarah muttered, her mind spinning. "If you thought this story couldn't get any more complicated, well, you were wrong. Dead wrong." The documents revealed a years-long surveillance operation focused on Sarah and her adoptive parents. Every aspect of her life had been monitored, analyzed, and recorded. But why? What could Jack and the others possibly hope to gain from this invasive scrutiny of her life? As Sarah dug deeper into the files, a sickening realization began to dawn on her. The surveillance hadn't just been about keeping tabs on her, it had been about control, and about shaping her life, her choices, her very identity, to mold her into the perfect heir for Anderson Corp. Her internship at the company, her chance discovery of her true parentage, none of it had been by accident. It had all been orchestrated, a grand manipulation designed to bring her into the fold on their terms. Sarah sank into a chair, her legs no longer able to support her. "Lisa," she said, her voice hollow, "what have we stumbled into?" Lisa looked at her friend, concern etched on her face. "I don't know," she admitted. "But whatever it is, it's big and dangerous. We need to be careful, Sarah. If they were willing to go to these lengths to control you, who knows what they'll do to keep this secret?" As the gravity of their situation sank in, Sarah couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine. She had thought uncovering the truth would be the hard part, but now she realized that was just the beginning. Now they had to figure out what to do with that truth, and how to stay alive long enough to expose it. Well, dear viewers, Sarah thought grimly, if you've made it this far, congratulations. You're now as deep in this mess as I am. The question is, where do we go from here? Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number and contained just 4 words, "Roof. Now, come alone." Sarah showed the message to Lisa, who shook her head vehemently. "No way," Lisa said. "It's too dangerous. We should call the police or—" But Sarah had already made up her mind. "I have to go," she said, her voice firm. "This might be our only chance to get answers." As she made her way to the roof, Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. Who could have sent the message? Jack? Marcus? Someone else entirely? And what would she find when she got there? Pushing open the heavy door to the roof, Sarah stepped out into the cool night air. The city stretched out before her, a glittering tapestry of lights and shadows. For a moment she stood there, taking in the view, steeling herself for whatever was to come. "Well, folks," she murmured to the imaginary audience that had become her silent confidants, "this is it. The moment of truth. Are you ready? Because ready or not, here we go." As she turned to face her mysterious summoner, Sarah Johnson Anderson, the girl who had wanted nothing more than to make her mark on the business world, realized that she was about to do just that, in a way she could never have imagined. The next few moments would determine not just her fate, but the fate of Anderson Corp, and perhaps the very nature of privacy and freedom in the digital age. The stage was set, the players were in place, and the final act of this corporate drama was about to begin. And you, dear viewer, have a front row seat to the spectacle. So sit tight, keep your eyes peeled, and remember, in the world of high-stakes business, nothing is ever as it seems. As Sarah stepped onto the roof, her heart pounding in her chest, she was met with an unexpected sight. Standing near the edge, silhouetted against the city skyline, was not Jack or Marcus, but a woman she had never seen before. The woman turned, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the city lights, and Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. "Hello, Sarah," the woman said, a voice soft but steady. "I've been waiting a long time to meet you." Sarah took a cautious step forward, her mind racing. "Who are you?" she asked, trying to keep her voice from trembling. The woman smiled, a sad, wistful expression that seemed to hold years of pain and longing. "My name is Catherine," she said. "I'm your mother." The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. She staggered slightly, her mind struggling to process this new information. Catherine, the woman Jack had told her about, the one who had disappeared before Sarah was born. She was here, alive, standing before her. "But how?" Sarah managed to choke out. "Jack said you disappeared. He's been searching for you for years." Catherine's expression hardened slightly at the mention of Jack's name. "Jack has been searching, yes," she said, "but not for the reasons you think. Sarah, there's so much you don't know, so much that's been hidden from you." As Catherine began to speak, unraveling a tale that spanned decades, Sarah felt as though she were watching a complex tapestry being woven before her eyes. The story that emerged was one of corporate espionage, ethical breaches, and a power struggle that had been raging since before Sarah was born. The Lazarus project, Catherine explained, wasn't just about developing new technology. It was about control of information of people, of the very fabric of society. Jack and Marcus were just the public faces. The real power behind the project went much deeper. Sarah listened, her mind reeling as she tried to absorb the implications of what she was hearing. The project had its roots in government contracts and shadowy agencies with tendrils that reached into every aspect of modern life. And at the center of it all was Sarah herself, the potential she represented. "You were never meant to be just Jack's daughter," Catherine said, her voice tinged with regret. "You were designed to be the perfect vessel, a combination of Jack's business acumen and my technological insights. They wanted to create the ultimate corporate leader, someone who could guide the project into the next phase." The weight of this revelation threatened to crush Sarah. Her entire existence, it seemed, had been orchestrated as part of some grand plan. Every choice she had made, every path she had taken, had been subtly influenced by unseen hands. "But why come forward now?" Sarah asked, struggling to keep her emotions in check. "Why reveal all of this?" Catherine's eyes softened as she looked at her daughter. "Because you're stronger than they anticipated," she said. "You've started to unravel their plans, to ask questions they never wanted asked. And because I couldn't bear to see you manipulated any longer, you deserve the truth, Sarah. You deserve a chance to make your own choices." As Catherine spoke, Sarah's mind was racing, connecting dots she hadn't even known existed. The strange coincidences throughout her life, the feeling of being watched, the ease with which she had secured her internship at Anderson Corp, it all suddenly made a terrible kind of sense. "What do we do now?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How do we stop this?" Catherine reached into her jacket and pulled out a small flash drive. "This contains everything," she said. "All the evidence, all the connections, everything you need to bring the whole operation crashing down. But Sarah, you need to understand, if you use this, there's no going back. Your life as you know it will be over." Sarah stared at the flash drive, feeling the weight of the choice before her. On one side lay the comfortable life she had known, the relationship she had built, the future she had planned. On the other, a leap into the unknown, a chance to expose a conspiracy that reached to the highest levels of corporate and government power. As she stood there, teetering on the precipice of a decision that would change everything, Sarah thought about all the people who had shaped her life: Jack, the Johnsons, Lisa, and now Catherine. She thought about the thousands of employees at Anderson Corp who had no idea of the true nature of the company they worked for. She thought about the millions of people whose lives could be affected by the technology developed under the Lazarus project. With a deep breath, Sarah reached out and took the flash drive from Catherine's hand. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady and resolute. "Whatever it takes, I'll expose the truth." Catherine's eyes filled with a mixture of pride and sadness. "It won't be easy," she warned. "They'll come after you with everything they have. Are you sure you're ready for that?" Sarah nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm settling over her. "I've been manipulated and lied to my entire life," she said. "It's time to take control of my own story." As mother and daughter stood there on the rooftop, the city sprawling out before them, a new chapter in Sarah's life was beginning. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and challenges she could scarcely imagine. But for the first time in her life, Sarah felt truly in control of her destiny. The truth had been revealed, a shocking twist in a story that had already defied belief. But as Sarah would soon learn, this was just the beginning. The real battle for justice, for truth, and for her very identity was about to begin. The world watched in stunned silence as Sarah Johnson Anderson stepped up to the podium, her face set in grim determination. The press conference had been hastily arranged, rumors swirling about a major announcement from Anderson Corp. But no one could have predicted the bombshell Sarah was about to drop. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment, "I stand before you today not as the heir to Anderson Corp, but as a whistleblower. What I'm about to reveal will shake the foundations of not just this company, but the entire corporate world. Over the next hour, Sarah laid bare the full extent of the Lazarus Project, the years of manipulation, and the far-reaching consequences of the technology that had been developed in secret. She presented evidence, much of it from the flash drive Catherine had given her, that implicated not just Anderson Corp, but dozens of other major companies and government agencies. As Sarah spoke, she could see the shock and disbelief rippling through the audience. Reporters furiously scribbled notes, cameras flashed continuously, and social media exploded with real-time reactions. This was more than just a corporate scandal, it was a revelation that would reshape the very fabric of society. In the front row, Jack Anderson sat, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Pride in his daughter's courage warred with fear of the consequences, and shame at his own role in the deception. As Sarah's eyes met his, she saw a silent plea for forgiveness, one that she wasn't yet sure she could grant. As the press conference drew to a close, Sarah braced herself for the storm that was about to break. She had known that her actions would have far-reaching consequences, but even she couldn't have predicted the chaos that would ensue. In the days that followed, Anderson Corp's stock plummeted, dragging down markets worldwide. Government agencies launched investigations, subpoenas were issued, and arrests were made. The tech world was in upheaval as the full implications of the Lazarus Project came to light. Sarah found herself at the center of a media frenzy. She was hailed as a hero by some, vilified as a traitor by others. Her face was splashed across newspapers and television screens around the globe. Privacy advocates rallied around her, while corporate interests sought to discredit her claims. Through it all, Sarah clung to her resolve. She had made her choice on that rooftop, and there was no going back now. So with Catherine and Lisa by her side, she navigated the treacherous waters of public scrutiny and legal battles. The hardest part, however, was dealing with the personal fallout. Jack had been arrested, along with Marcus and several other high-ranking executives. Sarah's relationship with her father was strained to the breaking point, torn between her love for him and her disgust at his actions. The Johnsons, her adoptive parents, were devastated by the revelations. Sarah's conversations with them were painful, filled with tears and recriminations. They had been unwitting pawns in the grand scheme, their love for Sarah genuine, even if the circumstances of her adoption had been orchestrated. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah found herself testifying before Congress, her words broadcast to millions. She spoke of the need for greater oversight in the tech industry, of the dangers of unchecked corporate power, and of the importance of individual privacy in the digital age. "We stand at a crossroads," she told the assembled senators, her voice ringing out in the hushed chamber. "The technology developed under the Lazarus Project has the potential to reshape our world. It's up to us to decide whether that reshaping will uplift humanity or subjugate it." Her testimony sparked heated debates and led to the drafting of new legislation aimed at regulating the development and use of invasive technologies. Sarah worked tirelessly with advocacy groups, lending her voice and her story to the cause of digital rights. But even as she fought for change on a global scale, Sarah struggled with her own personal demons. The weight of her decisions, the loss of the life she had known, and the constant pressure of public scrutiny took their toll. There were nights when she lay awake, questioning whether she had done the right thing, wondering if the cost had been too high. It was during one of these moments of doubt that Catherine found her sitting alone in the small apartment that had become her refuge from the outside world. Her mother sat beside her, taking Sarah's hand in her own. "I know it's hard," Catherine said softly. "Believe me, I understand the price of standing up for what's right. Sarah, you've done something extraordinary. You've given people a chance to shape their own futures, free from manipulation and control." Sarah looked at her mother, seeing the years of pain and sacrifice etched in the lines of her face. "How do you bear it?" she asked. "The weight of knowing, of fighting against something so much bigger than yourself." Catherine smiled, a mix of sadness and determination in her eyes. "You bear it because you must," she said. "Because the alternative, staying silent, letting the darkness win is unthinkable. You bear it because you're not alone. There are always others fighting alongside you, even if you can't see them. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. Lisa entered, carrying a stack of papers and a determined grin. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, "but I think I found something. A way to track the spread of the Lazarus technology and potentially neutralize it." Sarah felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. This was why she had chosen this path, not for glory or revenge, but for the chance to make a real difference. With renewed energy, she dove into Lisa's findings, the three women working late into the night. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows, Sarah stood and stretched, looking out at the city awakening below. The world was changing in part because of her actions. It was a heavy responsibility, but one she was finally ready to fully embrace. In that moment, Sarah realized that this wasn't an ending but a beginning. The exposure of the Lazarus Project had been just the first step on a much longer journey. There would be more battles to fight, more truths to uncover, more changes to champion. She turned back to Catherine and Lisa, a new determination in her eyes. "All right," she said, "what's our next move?" As they bent over their work, outlining strategies and planning their next steps, Sarah felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything she had experienced before. She had lost much: her innocence, her comfortable life, her unquestioning trust in the structures of society. But she had gained something far more valuable: the power to shape her own destiny and to fight for a future where others could do the same. The road ahead would be long and difficult, fraught with challenges and dangers. Sarah Johnson Anderson was ready to face whatever came her way. She had found her true calling, not as a corporate heir, but as a warrior for truth and justice in the digital age. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting its light over the awakening city, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. This was not the life she had imagined for herself, but it was the life she had chosen. And in that choice, she had found a freedom more precious than any corporate success could have offered. The story of Sarah Johnson Anderson, the whistleblower who brought down an empire and sparked a global revolution in digital rights, was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. And as she stood there, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, Sarah knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. As Sarah gazed out at the city skyline, her voice soft but filled with emotion, she spoke words that seemed to transcend the story itself. "You know, in this journey I've learned that the truth isn't just about facts and figures. It's about the courage to face yourself in the mirror every day and ask, am I living authentically? It's about the strength to stand up for what's right, even when the whole world seems to be against you. And most importantly, it's about the power of human connection, the hands we hold, the hearts we touch, and the lives we change along the way." To anyone out there feeling lost, manipulated, or trapped by circumstances beyond their control, I want you to know your story isn't written in stone. You have the power to pick up the pen and write your own ending. It might be scary, it might be painful, but I promise you, it's worth it. Remember, every time you choose truth over comfort, courage over fear, and love over hate, you're not just changing your own life, you're changing the world. We're all connected in this grand tapestry of life, and every act of bravery, no matter how small, sends ripples through the fabric of our shared existence. So tonight, as you reflect on your own journey, I challenge you to ask yourself, what truth am I hiding from? What change am I afraid to make? What love am I hesitating to give? Because in those answers you'll find your own path to freedom, to purpose, and to a life lived with no regrets. We all have a light within us, a unique spark that has the power to illuminate the darkness. Don't let anyone dim that light. Shine bright, stand tall, and remember your truth, your story, has the power to change the world. You are stronger than you know, more loved than you can imagine, and capable of more than you ever dreamed possible. So go forth, be brave, be kind, and never, ever give up on the power of truth and love to transform our world. Because in the end, that's what truly matters, Not the empires we build, but the lives we touch and the legacy of love we leave behind. As Sarah wrapped up her story, she turned to the camera with a warm smile and said, "You know, sharing this journey with you has been an incredible experience. It's like we've been on this roller coaster together, hasn't it? Now, I'd love to hear what you think. If this story resonated with you, why not leave a comment with the number 1? It would mean the world to me. And hey, if you're itching to know what happens next, trust me, there's more to this tale. Drop a 2 in the comments. Your enthusiasm is what keeps this story alive. Of course, if there's anything you disagree with or want to discuss further, I'm all ears. This journey is as much yours as it is mine, so don't hesitate to share your thoughts. Now, I know Jack would say this is just good business sense, but I'm going to be more personal. If you've enjoyed this ride and want to support the team that's worked so hard to bring this story to life, why not hit that subscribe button? It's like voting with your clicks for more content like this. Remember what we learned about the power of connection? Well, every subscription, every comment, it's all part of building this amazing community. So go ahead, make your voice heard. After all, in the world of storytelling, just like in the corporate world, every voice matters. Let's keep this conversation going.